Greetings and bienvenue, midnight crew. Thank you for returning to this broadcast, and welcome to new viewers joining us for the first time. If you like a video, then feel free to subscribe.
Alright bros, pick is related. Some freaky shit happened. Here is some background. I am a student at Virginia Commonwealth University studying biology. I'm currently taking an ornithology class about birds, and I have to take pictures of them every week and post them on a website. I'm currently in Northern Virginia for spring break. Sorry if my story is long, but let's begin. This just happened and is 100% true. So, I got to Roundtree Park in Fairfax County today around 3:30 p.m., Sunday, March 13, 2016, to take pictures of birds. I see that the trail is closed off due to a broken bridge that goes over a stream and go on a newly made detour, so I decided to say fuck it and go around the closure, and continue on the main trail. A little walk down the trail and I find stepping stones. They are about 10 across and are there for when it floods. I thought to myself, kinda cool, and stepped across them. I then decide to venture off and follow the stream. The water is super high since it is raining. Since streams lead to bigger bodies of water, I followed it hoping to find some stupid ass ducks or some shit type of bird. After about a 25-minute follow, this stream led to a massive reservoir. I'm guessing it was around 5 feet deep. You could definitely swim in it on a hot day, and it has a beach area to chill on. I am now beginning to feel a really fucking eerie feeling. Like something is watching me. I look to my right, see nothing, then I look up to my left and I see a birdhouse. This isn't a small shitty small birdhouse, but a real experimental birdhouse placed there by someone doing scientific research. I move closer to the birdhouse slowly and see that it obviously has been pried open on the bottom. These birdhouses are normally super fucking sturdy and it takes fucking strength to open the bottom. I am guessing a bear or something strong as fuck tried to open that shit, cause you can see claw marks on it. This doesn't really scare me. As I look straight after examining the birdhouse, I see a staircase. A metal fucking staircase in the middle of the woods with nothing around it. I'm guessing it was used as a hunting stand or some shit, but it's missing the top of part of the staircase. I know my creepy pastas, and fuck that shit, I did not go close to it. I continued to go left parallel to the reservoir and keeping my distance from the staircase. As I continue parallel to the left down the stream, and past the staircase, I spot a couple ducks, so I whip out my iPhone and take pictures of them. At one point a really strong breeze flows through the forest and I see a womanly figure about 40 yards ahead of me, walking ungodly fast through the brush. It was like her feet were walking, but she was gliding across the ground. I can't see her face. She was wearing a black trench jacket and walking as fast as some people sprint. At this point I'm a little scared, but more drawn back at the fact that there is another person a mile or a mile and a half in the forest. Since I don't want any problems, I stayed quiet, crouched, and tried to use my phone. But nope, shit is dead. I fully charged it before I went out today and am dumbfounded. As the person's figure starts to slowly fade away, I try again to turn on my phone, and it turns on, with 82% battery. I just don't understand this. I never had battery problems before, but today my phone is being a bitch. I continue to go left parallel to the stream and find a path and a hill about 200 feet tall. I decided to snap a picture of it. It looked beautifully creepy. The hill casted a shadow even though there was no sun out today. I look at the picture under the gallery, then I look at my iPhone's battery and it says 78%. I start to follow the trail up the hill. As I'm walking up the hill, the forest gets darker. Every step I am taking, it seems that less and less light is coming through the clouds. The sounds of the raindrops hitting the leaves are slowly fading. I can breathe, but I cannot hear my own breath being taken in, and the sound of my heartbeat is getting louder and louder. I reach the top of the hill, and my heartbeat is now the only thing I can hear. All the sounds of the forest are drowned, and it seems like it's 8:30 p.m. at night. I am deaf. I try clapping, and no sound is made. As soon as I realize that I am deaf, I know my adrenaline kicks in and I'm in shock at this point. I pull my phone to try to play music to see if I'm deaf, and my phone is dead again. I tried to turn it on 3 fucking times and the piece of shit does not turn on. I put it back in my pocket. I look forward and I see 3 shed-like houses in a horizontal linear formation about 20 yards ahead of me on this hill, and I smell a rotten foul smell. It smelt of dog shit, rotten chicken, with a very putrid sour aroma. The only senses I have at this time are my smell and my sight. I look at the middle shed, and the woman walks from behind it. Her hood is covering her eyes and nose, and all I see is a slight grin with her teeth showing. At this point, bros, I am about to shit my pants and I quickly run down the trail back to the bottom of this hill. As I am running, the forest gets brighter, the sounds of raindrops hitting leaves are back, I can hear my own breaths and I can hear birds. I look back at the hill to see if this bitch is following me, but she is nowhere to be seen. I continue to sprint through the brush, tripping and falling for about 10 minutes following the stream back. I start laughing because every 8th or 9th step I'm falling I felt safe, so walked the rest of it back to the closure of the trail. Can someone please explain to me what the fuck happened? I even turned my phone back on when I got into my car. It was at 68% but no photo of the hill. My phone has been working fine this afternoon. I don't know what I saw. I don't know if it was a homeless person or an apparition, but I'm spooked the fuck out. I'll put the pictures I have up now. Again, sorry for the long read. But this shit happened 7 hours ago and I'm still spooked.
Virginia native here. When I was 13, I decided to try hunting for the first time with my granddad and dad. We aren't hicks, just like to hunt, I guess. About 20 miles from Seaville, in the middle of fucking nowhere, literally miles from the next closest human. 15-minute drive into the woods from a road that has only been used by my family when we hunt and maybe lost travelers. Arrived at our cabin, a bit unkempt and seemingly abandoned. The walls in the big main room are lined with skulls and deer antlers and bear skins and shit. Unpack our things and settle in the cabin. It's about 3 in the afternoon, so no time to hunt today. Granddad and Dad give me a walk around the property. Get to a very remote tree stand. Granddad tells me no one ever uses it because it's like 2 miles from the cabin. As we arrive, some smell very, very awful. Worse than a skunk or anything else I've smelt in my life. This isn't gonna be a spook walker post, no worries. GP and Dad smell it too, and decide to turn back because of this rancid odor. Next day, Dad walks me out to my tree stand. I'm armed with a .30-06, a gun I'm familiar with and can shoot well with. Get to my tree stand where I'll be spending the next 10 to 12 hours waiting for anything killable. Say farewell to Dad, wish him luck, and ascend to my post. Fast forward about 8 hours, it's boring as fuck and I didn't see a goddamn thing. Decide to head back to cabin to eat. Descend the ladder of the stand, throw the rifle over my shoulder and get on my way. It's about a 20-minute walk to the cabin. No clear path to follow, just have to wander through the woods in the cabin's direction until things start to look more familiar. Fast forward like 5 to 10 minutes. Walking past a big group of seemingly random evergreen trees, so thick I can't imagine anything of substantial size navigating them. Small paths along the bottom, I assume used by foxes and maybe small coyotes or something. Looking in the evergreens, I hear something running very quickly through the fallen leaves at the bottom of a nearby hill. Roughly 200 feet away. Turn around and ready my weapon. This could be the moment I've been waiting for. Can't see shit but still hear movement. Decide to start moving to get a better look. Between a large forked tree, I finally get a decent look at what's causing the ruckus. Very large black dogs sniffing around, and I don't mean large like a husky or German shepherd. This thing was huge. At the time I was 5 foot 11 inches tall, and this thing easily was past my elbows. It was vicious looking, perhaps feral. Its eyes were a yellow-orangish color. Watch it for a few minutes just wandering about the woods. Eventually it runs off into the forest out of my sight. Continue my trek home, thinking about what exactly I just saw. Perhaps a large wolf or something. Get back to the cabin and make myself some food. Wait for my uncle and dad and granddad to return to home base. Uncle gets back first, says he found a small pile rotting deer carcasses out at the remote tree stand. It seems like they had been eaten. On his way back he said he heard something big moving very fast through the woods but never saw anything. I dunno if it's paranormal, but that's the most worthy thing I've had happen to me outside of ghost encounters and stuff.
Be me, living near Blacksburg, Virginia. Be around 18 and have a Bronco. Fuck yeah. Me and a couple of friends, both male and female, are bored hanging out at Jody's house, not actual name. Jody has 3 brothers who hunt, often at night. Which I don't think is legal in this state. So they have a thermal camera. The thing is old and huge, and we decide that it's a great idea to go hunt ghosts with this thing. One friend suggests the isolated place called Poverty Creek, which is in McCoy, as in Hatfield and McCoy's. Some of the family are still buried there. It's way back in the sticks. About 5 of us hop in my Bronco to get ourselves spooked. The area has a creek, but the road is also called Poverty Creek. Don't live there anymore, by the way. Behind an old beaten-up Baptist church and down a gravel road, which turns into dirt eventually. The whole road has only 4 or 5 houses on it, all of which are abandoned, like no doors or windows abandoned. It's about 12:30 when we get up near the creek itself. Jody is sitting in the front seat and turns on the thermostat, looking through it as I roll through. Just to spook everyone, I turn off all the lights of the truck, getting a good scream out of friends. I turn it back on and Jody calls out, "Wait, wait, wait, wait." Asks her what the fuck she's freaking out about. Says she saw a bright spot in the trees. I tell her what a fucking deer is, although she isn't biting. We are stopped at this point. She points the lens to the floorboard to readjust it. All of us are just sort of waiting for her. She points it back up through the front windshield. Screams like a banshee and throws the thermal camera on the floor. Everyone in the car shits a brick and a half. Now she's wailing, covering her face and curling her legs up onto the seat. She was pretty small. One of her brothers is in the back seat and is pissed that she might have broken the camera. Everybody yelling to get out of here, and I'm fairly shooken up after that scream. I decided to drive back to Joda's house. The shock kinda killed the mood for me. Jody won't talk, still curled up in seat. Her brother checked the camera and is now trying to ask what she saw. Every time he asks, she just shakes her head. Finally we get back, and I drop Jody and her brother off. Nobody really wants to do anything else tonight, I guess. That's the end of the night for me, but Jody's brother, I'll call him Kyle, relays the rest of the events to me. Jody has calmed down some, but won't sleep alone. She convinces her mother to sleep in a bed with her. Around 3 a.m., the mom wakes up. She turns her head to look at the clock, which is on Jody's side of the bed. Figure standing over Jody. It's just under 6 feet, and the texture of it is like static on a TV, like you can't focus on any detail, just the overall shape. Mom doesn't move, figure doesn't move, just looking at Jody. Jody's mom wants to scream, but she feels herself nodding off. She falls back to sleep. In the morning, Jody finally reveals what she saw through the camera. It was a human figure standing on all fours, with its arms and legs and not underneath the body, like it was imitating a spider. Looking right at her. That's all I got. I didn't see shit, but from what I heard I really don't want to.
This ended up being a shitload longer, but I remembered a lot, so might as well say everything I remember. This is a delayed nope story. I'm not good at making up stories, so I'll tell my only paranormal experience I have. This took place for me in 2002, Williamsburg, Virginia. My brother and I got custody changed over to my father after some shit went down, and my father was in the Navy at the time. He got brought off his ship, USS Enterprise, and was supposed to head back to the Persian Gulf because of the whole 911 shit. Well, my dad shared an apartment with my aunt in Williamsburg for offshore duty periods. This is where my story begins. Brother and I live at aunt's apartment, down the street from the Fire Chop Steakhouse in Williamsburg. Uncle and aunt have their own room all the way in the back of the apartment. Brother and I have the room down the hall from them. Dad slept in a third room by the front door. Aunt, uncle, and father are all in the Navy. They get brutal shifts sometimes, and it's mostly just my brother and I there. My aunt had bought some cats recently, meaning nothing to us, nor was it said why they bought them. One day my brother and I were in our room playing on our new PS2 my dad bought us when we separated from our mom. Think it was Gran Turismo 4 and Tekken Tag Tournament. Aunt is asleep in her room. Dad and uncle are not home. Aunt sleeps a lot during the day since she works nights mostly on base. Around 4 p.m. or something, the two cats rush into our room and just start meowing. They never went near us. They were really skittish and only stayed near my aunt or uncle. Cats stay with us and we pet them and love them, and they just start acting normal after a bit and go back to my aunt's bedroom. Bell sound, like one of those fancy living room coffee table bells. Cat must have bumped into some knick-knacks or something. Aunt comes flying out of her room and into the shower. Notice she kind of looked grim as hell, like she was sick or really cold. She doesn't mention anything to us and acts like it never happened. Okay, well, my dad got an apartment for us to go live in over in Norfolk, Virginia, so we moved after about a week. Thanksgiving the next year, my grandmother asked me if I knew about what was happening at the apartment, because me and my brother stayed there. Uncle overhears grandmother and pulls us aside, saying he didn't want to tell them. We insist, and he says something like, "It's over now, so it doesn't matter, I guess." Well, my aunt's shifts were off compared to my dad and my uncle's. She ended up being home alone a lot. She said there was a spirit in the house that would fuck with her. Well, at the time she was going through her first month of pregnancy with my cousin at the time. That's when the spirit apparently showed up. My aunt said she could feel someone come into the bed when she was home alone. Said she could hear someone walking around the apartment. She freaked the fuck out and came out with it when this happened though. She was sitting at the dinner table eating, when the china decoration bell she had on her dresser in her room started ringing. Loud. The bell in her room never moved, but it would ring when she wasn't in the room. Uncle said she was full of shit. Dad said he didn't experience anything. They bought cats. Cats would act weird, like following around someone when no one was there, or get aggressive in the bedroom and run out. A couple weeks after my dad and I and my brother moved out, it happened. My uncle was home during the day for some off time with my aunt. Uncle went to take a shower while aunt was asleep. He swore up and down while he was in the shower. His back went ice cold and could almost feel like he was being shoved. Said he torn down the curtains and grabbed my aunt and ran the fuck out of the apartment complex ass naked with his cell phone. He talked to one of his friends who went to church nearby and they got a priest to check out the apartment. Apparently they tried to have the apartment cleansed and it didn't work. Aunt says she threw out the bell and she would still hear it calling her to bed. They moved out and told us about it the year after. Realized the cats ran to us because the ghost was fucking with my aunt in the other room.
I've got a couple. Be around 2 or 3. Live in a pretty big house. Former slave plantation according to the landlord. Be sitting in mom's room playing with Legos. Decide to go get some juice. Tried to leave but the door was locked. Suddenly all the dresser doors, drawers, closet doors, and windows just started opening and closing. See some kind of face outside the window, it looked like it had a beard. It stops. No one believed me. Next one, same house. Since it was a former slave plantation, we had a huge field. Be about 4. Standing in the upstairs hallway, staring out the window. See somebody standing out in the field holding a candle or something. Yell for my mom. She says she doesn't see anything, but I'm staring right the fuck at the thing. Happens a few more times, eventually moves out of the house when dad goes to jail. Last one, current house, still in rural Virginia with woods all around the house. Be about 7 or 8. Sitting home alone, watching TV when my dog out back starts barking. Look out the sliding glass door and see this thing about the size of my dog, which was a boxer, golden lab mix. Was fat like a bear. Had brown fur and a flat, white face with 2 black holes where eyes should be. My dog flips shit and breaks the chain and comes running to the front porch. Too scared to open the door, just sit there staring at the thing. It backs up into the woods. Let the dog in. No one believes me.
All right. I'll explain. Be me about 10-year-old. Lived in an old house in Chester, Virginia. Only for about 2 years while my mom was caring for my great-aunt. Great-aunt went blind early in her life. One summer day, since my cousins lived right next door, it was just me and her at home. Little house, although 2 stories. Stairs leading up were that kind where it makes a complete 90-degree angle at one point. Hear a strange noise as I'm watching TV. Aunt was right there listening to the TV with me. Tell me to go check it out, while she calls over Melissa, my cousin. Come back downstairs and my aunt is not in her usual rocker. Now this is where I immediately got creeped out. She was in bad shape, from spending most of her life sitting, so she had always shuffled around real slow. Hear noise in kitchen. Go check it out. And cooking in the oven, reaching into cabinets and lifting pots. WTF.jpg. Aunt Peggy, how are you? Before I finished my sentence, this deep manly voice shouted quiet. Came from her direction. She didn't move a muscle or turn her head when I was talking. I instantly haul ass out the kitchen, to the living room, and out the front door. Cornbread smelling through the air. Bolt next door and barge in. Explain everything. Melissa never got a phone call. Looks at me like I'm psychotic. Come back to Aunt Peggy's house. She goes inside and calls me in. And sitting in her rocker listening to TV like she was. Asks me if I ever checked the sound out. Told her something fell. Fuck that, not going back upstairs. Cousin calls me silly / mean / childish, yada yada. Cousin leaves. I walk back and casually made a joke like I had a taste for cornbread. Aunt laughed and said she can't stand for that stuff. Mom comes home, life goes on. About 2 years after that, she burned her house down from attempting to use the oven, as stated by police. Confused my entire family, except me. I felt so weird and still creeped out about the whole thing. But what really set the questions off was that there was a $4 charge from Walmart on her card from the same day. My family swears up and down that they saw security footage of her actual self purchasing a box of cornbread at the store. Walking like she can see, without knee problems. My family pretty much freaked out over this whole thing for months. My mom said at one point in the footage during her checking out, she just locked eyes onto the camera in the ceiling. Said it was so creepy. Mom doesn't even worry about it anywhere. My whole family has pretty much forgotten about this incident. But I think about it a lot.
I've never told these stories before except to the friends I experienced both stories with. They may or may not coincide. If anyone has an idea of what the fuck happened in these, please let me know. Going to give some background to help. These happened within a month of each other. First occurred about early December, the other very early January. The area is Axton, Virginia. If anyone is familiar with the area, it's just a fuck ton of woods and open tobacco land. Also not going to the greenest cause, doing this from a terrible phone with a dying keyboard. First story. Me and two friends. I was 15 and they were 18 or 19. Nothing to do, it's winter break, some decide to go explore and smoke some weed. So we walk up the road about a mile and see a old cabin building, extremely common in the area, surrounded by woods. Fuck yes, exclusive.jpg. Go and start looking around it. The standard old cabin half is a tobacco dry house and the rest is a small stable, most likely for a cow and some chickens. Building is old and nowhere to sit, so we decide to go to the back of the building and roll up there. Go around the building and see bones everywhere, recent bones, I mean littered everywhere in a 20 by 20 foot area, and they were all relatively new, so we figure fuck, this must be a bear's home or a pack of wolves, but it's about noon, so whatever, smoke and talk then leave. Well, we decide the next day to go back, and that's when the weird starts. Get back behind the building about the same time as the day before, and nearly all the bones are gone except for the larger ones. I'll never forget it, they had been arranged to spell two words. I will use X for characters we couldn't recognize, KRXVXCOXLXRXMK. Noped the fuck out of there and never returned. Second story. While staying at a friend's house, we get bored at night and decide we are gonna sneak out and smoke. It's about 1 a.m. and everyone in the house is asleep but us. So go outside. In my friend's front yard is an old slave cabin / tobacco dry house that they used as a shed, and start looking for a place hidden from view of the house and decide beside the shed would be best. We get over there and notice a light is on in the back of the building where the tools are, so we look through the window to see my friend's dad there, which confused us because he was a trucker and had a run that day and wasn't going to wake up till 3 to go in. What made it more odd is that he was rummaging through the tools, and this was a man that kept everything organized. He knew where every tool he needed was. So for some reason Education decided to throw a rock in there to maybe spook his dad and get a laugh. Throw rock and it hits the wall that he is facing. Immediately stops rummaging and stays completely still, staring into the tool drawer he was going through. After about a minute he resumes going through the tools, so we throw another rock, said hit this time though. His dad grabs the drawer and hurls it at the wall in our direction. We freak out and run back to the house. As soon as we get to the porch his dad steps out of the house saying, "What the hell are you boys?" and stares at the shed. We looked back at the shed and whatever it was that looked like his dad was there on the step staring at us. It throws its head back and releases the oddest sound I've ever heard, not a bark or howl, but like a grumble from a stomach, and runs faster than anyone I've ever seen straight into the woods. Those are my stories we all still talk about, but never about those incidents.
I'm located in Northern Virginia and a few friends, and I went to explore this big trail where a few Civil War battles took place. Obviously, it was night time. But I guess here's the story. Get to the trail. Walk past the gate and proceed into the dark, semi-moonlit forest. Shooting the shit, puffing on a cig. We wander about 35 minutes into the woods and decide that we'll get to the field clearing up ahead and take a look around and then head back. Get to the field and explore, don't see shit. Regroup and prepare to head back. See two small orange lights low in some nearby brush, kinda like eyes. Due to immense boredom and not wanting to consider this a wasted trip, one friend and I decided to go check it out. We get about 15 feet away from the brush, the two eyes have not moved. Friend starts to get nervous and wants to back out. Trying to talk him into it, start to hear the bush move around. Flick light back into the direction, it's a dog. Dog is really skinny, looks diseased, and starts to growl at us. We just back up to the group and start to leave. Dog follows us the entire way, always within 10 feet of us. We get back to the home stretch, towards the main gate. See a shadow pass by the gate, looking like a person. We stop and are like, whoa, that was spooky. We kept going and got in the car. The dog didn't go past the gate, but stood behind it and watched us leave. Not that crazy, but we did go back a while later and saw a bit more stuff. Guess I'll post that too before I go to work. 1 year later, it was October 23rd, and second friends from the same group and I had smoked a little weed and went out to eat. We decided we wanted to get scared shitless and see a ghost in the woods, so we headed back to the Civil War trails. Here's how things proceed. Get back to the gate, not really that high anymore. I dropped from an 8 to a good 3 on the weed scale, just slightly buzzed. We head in, talk about the time we came here last year and the dog and the spooky shadow. We follow a different part of the trail and the opposite direction into the woods. We walk for like 25 minutes, arrive at a bridge that goes over a large creek, probably a 35-foot long bridge I'd say. We sit on the benches on the bridge and have a cig. After about 10 minutes of chilling, we hear footsteps coming towards us on the trail, figure it's some other kids trying to get spooked. Turn our lights towards the direction and see nothing. Well, that's weird, Shake it off since we were on the ganja and probably just thought we heard something we didn't. Continue across the bridge and deeper into the woods. Nothing for a while. We reached the end of the trail to another gate which on the other side had a small parking area and 2 houses adjacent. Turn around and start to head back. About another 5 minutes of walking, we hear something behind us. It's the same dog from the last time, and looks exactly the same. We're surprised he's still alive in such rough shape. He looks like maybe a black lab or something like that. IDK much about dogs beyond the typical popular kinds. We stand there and stare at it for a while. It stands still and watches us too. We decide to head out. It follows us like it did last time, always staying within 10 feet of us. The entire walk back from here, things get kinda funky. We make it across the bridge again. As we proceed through the trails, we hear footsteps coming across the bridge like someone's running. Turn around to see if there's a jogger or something. Dog must have heard it too, because he was turning towards the bridge watching. The footsteps fade, and we end up seeing nothing. We wait a while longer, and decide to head out. Dogs still follow us still. We get back to the main stretch leading to the gate. I stop to light a cig, and my friend ties his boots up. Before we went to continue, we heard a seemingly human yell from deep in the woods. Sounds like it came from where we were the first time. We quicken our pace and continue down the trail. Shadow passes by the gate again, still looks just as human as it did before. We get back to the car, decide we're gonna give the dog a half-eaten bag of Lay's we had in the car. Toss the bag over the gate and hear him start to gobble them down, and we get the fuck out of there. That's the end of my Civil War trail experiences.
When I was around 10, I was with my friends for a sleepover one night. They live in Fluvanna, Virginia in the sticks but relatively close to people. Like a cul-de-sac in the woods. I had heard a story or two about this from my boy and his sis before but never thought anything of it. Just haha good one as if, well that's what I thought till this one night. After it got to about 11 or so we crashed in the living room. He's on the couch and I'm on the floor facing him in a door that leads to an open porch towards a lake. Everything was good that day. Played in the woods like whatever. But that morning I awoke right at dawn where everything was just light enough to see without the sun peeking, which I never do since I'm such a heavy sleeper, never been a morning guy. That's when I saw a figure in all black robes and hood staring at me with dull yet illuminated eyes. No iris, no white, just dull blue and cold. I realize this is what they were telling me about before, and I'm fucking paralyzed praying it doesn't try to open the door. Just before I throw my blanket over my face, another passes behind it from right to left, which would lead it to either the steps going to the yard or to the side my boy's sliding doors to his room, or the first turns and follows. I rolled over, wondering if what I saw was real or not. I heard nothing, which was weird cuz you can usually hear footsteps on the wood outside, and I definitely would have heard the sliding doors open. But nothing happens, and I can see my friend snoozing inches away from the door. These figures were about 6 foot, but I was so young I couldn't be sure. It certainly wasn't the couple of other Wood Hood kids next door fucking around. I passed out soon after and had breakfast, not saying shit to anyone lest I invoke whatever that shite was. Over the years I never saw it again. But then again I made sure I never faced the windows or that door again, which was like 80% glass. Never went out at night alone, or at least never left the porch again.
When I was in 8th grade, my friends and I decided to skip school and leave during lunch. Our escape was flawless, of course, being well-practiced little deviants. If went into the first floor bathroom, there was a supply closet you could card pretty easily. Through the closet is a connecting door which leads into the auditorium, then through the empty auditorium was an exit door to freedom. Anyway, we ran across the schoolyard, across the street, and into the trees beyond. This is rural, Southern Virginia, near the Tennessee border. Our town didn't have sidewalks, if that tells you anything. We know the way to a trail to a local swimming hole, waterfall, cave, and figure we'll go hang out there and maybe do a swim. We're there at the waterfall and we're doing general childhood tomfoolery, shoving each other into the water, having lightsaber duels with sticks, etc. I get the great idea to go into the cave. My friends are too scared. All of our parents have warned us not to go into the cavern because we could slip into a crack and nobody ever sees you again. There was a high school kid a couple years before who had gone into the cavern, fell into the water at the bottom and got sucked into an underground cave. At least, that's what everyone figured happened anyway. To his friends, he just went in the water and was never seen again, just like we got warned. Me, being a humongous, ignored this advice and went into the cavern. I was very careful to stay near the mouth of the cave and I slid on my butt so I wouldn't slip. My friends are begging me to stop going further, but I'm getting a rush from being a big Billy badass. Of course, mentally I'm shitting bricks because I didn't understand how dark it is in a cave. This was around 1999 or 2000, so we didn't have phones or anything to use as a light. I had a Bic lighter for firecrackers, but I'd been in the water and it was too wet to light. Just as I decide to change my mind and start scooting myself back up to the top, my feet just can't find the traction to move me up and instead I slip further down. I'm screaming help help, but none of them are about to slide down in there because they're not fucking retards like me. I panic and try to flip onto my belly and scramble up that way. But while I'm flipping I just lose all control and sloop down the side of the rock, into the water below. I will never forget how my heart felt when I hit the water. Not only was it ice cold and pitch black, but I was already freaking out. I'm not ashamed to admit that I actually voided my bowels. All I could think of was that high school kid and how I was going to get sucked down by an undercurrent into a cave. I thought about how my mom would miss me and it made me cry. I remember my head going under the water and my body moving down fast. Must be the undercurrent, I figured. I basically resigned myself to death. I stopped holding my breath and breathed in the water. I must have passed out because the next thing I remember I was being pulled out of the swimming hole by my friends, on the outside of the cave. Near as I can tell I was sucked through the bottom and went through some channel to just come out the other side safe. I threw up river water and my lungs burned worse than they ever have even to this day. I coughed for probably 45 minutes off and on while I sat and shivered and pulled myself together. It was a while before I was calm enough to notice that my friends were all dressed differently than they were when I went under. I asked them if they had changed their clothes or something, but they acted like they had no clue what I was talking about. Everything just seemed kind of weird and too bright. The colors of the woods and the rocks and the water were all much more vibrant, and slightly different shades than I remembered. The next day, returning to school after having told my parents nothing about it, I asked around about the high school kid who died and nobody knew what I was talking about. I noticed other things that were different too. The school mascot and team colors were different. My books looked different, some were smaller than before and some were bigger. My clothes at home were different too. In particular, I had a Guns N' Roses shirt that was my dad's, but now it said Guns N' Roses. Just little things like that that I remember being different before I fell in the water. Years later, of course, I learned about the Mandela effect, and obviously I now believe that when I went into the water I was sucked through into an alternate reality that is mildly different than my original reality. This causes me extreme distress, but I don't tell anyone about it. I am in my 30s now, and only now am I able to even tell you guys anonymously. Honestly, I feel like this whole thread is me admitting to myself that this happened. The biggest difference between the world I'm in now versus the world I was in before was that the world I was in before seemed very safe. I have felt a strong difference in just the general tone of the world. I don't know if the US was involved in the Gulf War because I had never once heard of that. Of course it could have been because I was a pre-teen, but I dunno. 9/11 happened not long after, and that's when I learned about a lot of new differences. For example, I learned about how the Taliban used to be allies fighting the Soviets before the Soviet Union collapsed. As far as I understood it, as of 1999 the Soviet Union was still around, and I heard my parents talking about how they're going to take over the whole Middle East. I knew about Russia as the world's bad guys. There were still movies like Red Dawn, etc. I understood there was concern about Russia controlling the world's oil supply, which was the actual plot of the third Rambo movie. I remember watching it on TV, and it was about Rambo fighting the Russian oil supply. Not about Rambo helping the Mujahideen. I know this sounds dumb as fuck, but I was a kid. Most of what I knew about the world came from movies, I admit, but I'm positive the Soviet Union was a world power when I went into the water. So before I went into the water, the tone was like what we know now as the Cold War. The biggest fear was that Russia would take control of all the Middle East and become unstoppable. But even though that was a scary thing to think about, it didn't feel as bad because there was still a plot. It made sense. The world now feels like pure chaos, almost nothing makes sense here. I think it made sense before. America and the West in general felt very unified in opposition to the Soviet Union. I think we were probably headed towards World War III, but at least that made sense. Now all this conflict and shit we have now, it doesn't feel like anything is real. I think I left the ordered world and entered into the chaos world. I think we're all in a chaotic world right now. Anyway, that's all I have. But I'm thinking maybe this weekend I'll drive down there and go back to the cavern and see what it's like. I don't think I want to go into the cavern, but I can check it out. I dunno, part of me thinks that maybe if I go into the water again, I'll come back out in the real world, or at least my original world. Both worlds could be real, I guess.
I've been lurking for a while and decided it was time to share my paranormal story. I want to know if what I experienced sounds like something anyone else has encountered. I'm not a druggie, nor do I have any known mental ailments, and this is the only time I've experienced something paranormal to a significant degree. Be me. Walking home from friend's house at 2 a.m. The road is surrounded by trees. Not uncommon for Northern Virginia suburbs. There is a bend in the road I get a weird feeling from every time I pass. Have to get home, so fuck it, am no pussy. I usually walk in the center of the road at this point to stay clear of the woods. As I do on this particular night, I see a blue light floating in front of me. The light was aimless and just sort of fluttered around. A firefly, I thought. It was blue. I'm a curious person in general, so I forget about the unsettling woods I'm surrounded by and approach it. As I approach it, it seems to grow aware of me and move away from me. Not gonna let a firefly outrun me. JPEG. I dart for it, and to my surprise it darts away. It seems hellbent on maintaining approximately 4 feet away from me, no more no less. I processed this for a second. Why is it blue? Wait, why isn't it glowing in and out? Fireflies normally don't retreat when people try to catch them, they're docile, almost indifferent. Something's not right. I glance around and notice the air is still. I challenge the blue firefly by taking a step towards it. It backs away. I then circle around it and take a step away from it. It glides towards me. I noticed more abnormalities. It moves more like a dragonfly, less like a firefly. It's February, this can't be a dragonfly. I began to take a few more steps towards it. My mind felt in charge one moment and sort of yanked the next. It matched my pace and maintained 4-ish feet, leading me into the woods. I regained my senses, and felt a sudden sensation of dread. Why do I keep walking towards it? The dread climaxed and my mind and body were then in sync. I ran up the hill away from it. Big nope. I looked back and it fluttered into the middle of the road. It went back to being aimless. It has been years since that happened. The children in my neighborhood don't even play there despite it being a popular spot when I was a kid. Its movement were too sharp and the way it seemed to respond to my movements felt too calculated. It wasn't a firefly. What was it? Nothing I have looked up matches the behavior or even coloring of the light. I have my own theories, but they're not grounded in anything. I get the impression it was a lure.
Listen, X, I've been looking for info on something called the Dial Tone Men. I have vague memories of a post concerning them here, though it was a long time ago. From Google searching, all I've been able to scrounge up is a post with a short summary posted like 2 years ago in a Scary Stories thread on some comic book forum that I've never heard of. I'll post that in a minute. Other than that, all I've been able to find about it is a book that was in my local library called Surreality: Real Oddities in the Real World, by an author named Casey J. Arman that, according to the librarian, has a chapter dedicated to this phenomenon. I say, was, because that shit was checked out 4 fucking years ago and was never returned. On top of that, I can't find shit about this book or author online, which blows my mind. It's like neither of them even fucking exist. If someone could help me out on this, that would be killer. This shit is frustrating the hell out of me. The Dial Tone Men, or Dial Tone groups, are a worldwide, unexplained paranormal phenomenon. Often cited in groups of 4 to 8 individuals, the Dial Tone Men are typically associated with the Men in Black phenomenon, as they always appear as pale, well-groomed, middle-aged Caucasian males in black or gray suits, all carrying briefcases. They are mostly sighted walking as group, in a straight line within scarcely populated areas. They usually remain in sight for only a few minutes before quickly vanishing around a corner or at any point when they are unable to be seen. They have been known to completely ignore any attempts to get their attention or to confront them, and have never been reported speaking to, or otherwise interacting with, any people or things surrounding them. The Dial Tone Men have received their name from their most defining feature, that being that when within a certain proximity, all witnesses have claimed to hear what they describe as a very loud and continuous dial tone buzz. Witnesses have never been able to pinpoint where the sound is emanating from, but all have stated they could not hear the noise until they approached the group. When the groups are pursued, they commonly turn corners or find a way of escaping the pursuer's view, and when said pursuer catches up with them, they are nowhere to be found. There have been several attempts to identify the members of the Dial Tone Men, but all have failed as no witnesses have been able to recall exactly what their faces looked like, and no viewers have had time to take a clear photograph of them. Thus, the dial tone men remain a poorly documented, mostly obscure, and widely disputed anomaly. The first recorded sighting of the dial tone men was in 1996. They were spotted by 28-year-old Virginian Anthony Pullman, who saw the group walking down the vacant streets of his suburban neighborhood while he was walking his dog, at about 7 p.m. Curious about seeing a group of businessmen in the small neighborhood, he pursued them. As he got closer, he began hearing a faint buzz. The closer he got, the louder it became, until it was so loud that it began to give him a headache. His dog began acting erratic and alarmed. Anthony continued to follow them, claiming later to have been unable to control his body and wanting, the entire time, to turn back. Anthony and his dog continued to follow the group for a few meters that Anthony described as feeling like miles. Then the group abruptly stopped in their tracks, at which point Anthony and his dog became paralyzed. Anthony described the buzzing at this point to be unbearably loud, saying, "It was like someone was tearing my goddamn head in two." At this point, Anthony reported feeling blood seeping from his ears, and feeling extremely lightheaded. Anthony bent over, vomited on the pavement, and looked back up to see the group walk onto one of his neighbors' lawns and behind their house. After this occurred, Anthony reported that the buzzing faded, and he was able to move. He chased after them and went behind his neighbor's house, but was unable to see them anywhere. Anthony later called the police, fearing the group had robbed his neighbor's house. No evidence was found of a theft, and the men were never identified. As stated in the Anthony Pullman sighting, the dial tone men have been known to cause bleeding from the ears, paralysis, nausea, headaches, and the inability to control one's own movements. A few arguably credible stories involving encounters with the dial tone men have stated that getting within arm's length of one or more of the dial tone men has not only resulted in temporary deafness, but also week-long comas and permanent loss of sight. Very few, if any, authentic photographs of the dial tone men exist. Legitimate sightings, though rare, have occurred in North America, the UK, and Germany. To this day, the phenomenon remains unexplained.
Some viewers may find the following video disturbing. Viewer discretion is advised.
This whole scenario is so fucking dark for both parties. Absolutely lonely, mentally impaired man-child who is basically schizophrenic with no one who probably loves him, lives basically alone and believes in a different dimension of his creation, surrounded by his hoarding in his filthy house, which is probably dead quiet considering Barb is basically not even a person at this point. There is a dying soul sharing the house with you. It's quiet, it does not speak unless spoken to. You can sit down and play a video game while she sits somewhere in the house, staring at something, doing nothing. Just staring. No one likes you, no one loves you, you become more and more insane, you're too far gone, there's no fixing it. You're basically famous but absolutely not in a good way. Everyone knows about your life, no one wants anything positive to do with you. You might not even be able to comprehend the emptiness you live in. Maybe that's for the best, to live in ignorance. Then there's Barb, not in control of her life anymore. It's being controlled by this monster she helped create. She can't form a coherent sentence, looks on the verge of death every time she shows up, is being eaten alive by dementia and God knows what else. Then suddenly one day your monster mentally disturbed son, who is your only caretaker, crawls through the debris of your quiet, dark, filthy, smelly, disgusting house and begins to come onto you, mumbling and fumbling over your old decrepit disintegrating body, and assaults you. And he assaults you every 3 days. You become his girlfriend, and he releases all of his urges on you. There's nothing you can do. you're not fit to do literally anything. You probably don't even know what's happening half the time. You might even completely forget the events the next day due to the dementia and re-experience it anew 3 days later, not even allowing you to get used to it. You can't ask for help, you can't fight back, you can't leave. You are in hell.
I hope that you enjoyed tonight's broadcast. If you enjoyed tonight's story, then please subscribe to the channel as more Greentext will appear daily. A new broadcast will appear when the clock strikes midnight Central Time.